Hello my internet friends, Napiet here. Thought it might be nice to do a wrap up of E3, how I watched it this year, some thoughts on the various conferences, an overall opinion at the end of the video. For the past few years I've always watched E3 with a commentator, someone you follow regularly who looks at the video as it happens. It's very rarely that I kind of watch the conference itself clean. I like to watch the people I respect and follow talking about it, and that for me was Tall Biscuit and Funhouse. There's a nice kind of divergence there. When you just feel like frivolousness, you can watch Funhouse getting drunk, and when you feel like some more in-depth analysis, you can listen to Total Biscuit and his wife Jenna talking about it. They're a little bit cynical and sometimes overly cynical, but I think it balances out in general in that they have really good insights. So this was the first year I thought, right, I'm going to sit down and try and watch everything. And, you know, it's always going to be cringy E3, and the EA conference started out that way from the beginning with this band, this kind of marching band at the beginning. I talked about this last year, and I wasn't able to express it then, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to express it any better now. But the kind of disconnect between this spectacle that you're watching and the experience of consuming the product that these people are selling really jars for me, and I don't know if there's a way to really do anything about that, but how to express it. This band playing on this stage right now has nothing to do with the experience of sitting on your ass, looking at a screen, playing a computer game for 6 hours. There's absolutely no connection, and so it always seems incongruous to me and jumps out as really, really silly. I go into not just EA but E3 itself looking for a couple of different things. Gameplay that actually shows me what I'm going to be experiencing, and new reveals that are going to excite me. And in terms of EA's conference, it had neither of those things. They're all continuations of series that have been going on for now 20 years now. Madden, which is, I mean, it has a story mode now. The story mode is the thing. FIFA has a story mode, and also Need for Speed is coming. So those are the three of the games that they showcased this year. They're huge sellers. So I've never been into them, and I'm never going to be into them, and that's a shame. But, you know, I don't like car porn. I've never been into football, and I don't even understand American football. So obviously the one exception for me is Battlefront, and that looked good. Honestly, let's do a little bit of a critic thing. I don't often do this. It looked exactly the same as Battlefront 1, the one from last year. I didn't watch it and think, wow, I'm bowled away by this. I really thought, well, that's more of the same. And so I'm always excited for a Star Wars game. That it's coloured by, I think, a sense of disappointment that EA has the license for Star Wars games, and since the purchase by Disney and the relaunch of Star Wars, you would think they've had about 3 or 4 years lead time now, and the only good Star Wars game out, I'm sorry, but Star Wars Tour doesn't count, it's getting on in years and it's not a great game in my opinion, is Battlefront. And there's so much more potential in Star Wars. We already know that from the legacy of games that are already there. So the fact that the only option for a Star Wars enthusiast at the minute is Battlefront 2 kind of makes me not as bowled over by Battlefront 2. I want to see something else, and there was rumour that there was going to be one of the other games that EA's kind of one of the publishers under EA is working on, but there was no sign of that whatsoever. So that was very disappointing for me. Yeah, so overall quite cringy, the EA conference. That's a shame, but I was appreciative of the Funhouse guys. Listen to them getting drunk, better than listening to a lot of what was on stage. Oh yeah, and Battlefield 1 DLC, if you like war and that. By contrast, the Xbox Microsoft conference seemed much more interesting, and I think overall a lot better. They showed a lot of games. They also released the new console, which I think takes the price for the shittest, most unimaginative console name ever, designed to confuse grandmothers across several continents. In between, and kept the cringe to a minimum, apart from a Porsche on stage at one point that is got something to do with Forza. Forza to me is a name of a driving game. I know nothing more than that. It has nice graphics and you drive around in a car. Possibly like the one on the stage, maybe that's the connection. But obviously you don't drive in it, you sit at a computer, so the Porsche seems slightly irrelevant to me. 4K, they were pushing 4K, and that's fine. You know, it's the next evolution of the size of televisions, and that happens. The televisions keep getting bigger. I wonder if there'll be a point at which they can't get any bigger. I mean, there obviously is, because they can't be bigger than your room, or maybe they can. Maybe they're aiming for the point at which it's just your entire wall is a television. Something called Mixer that they're trying to really push, and companies haven't got the idea that you can't set trends happen and you have to capitalize on them. I don't know what Mixer is, and I don't have any desire to know. Just the fact that a company's pushing it kind of puts you off. But the number of games shown was many more, and quite a few that interested me. The highlights for people who follow the series that these games are obviously more interested in stuff like Metro Last Light, the next in the Metro saga of games, Assassin's Creed. That looks like more of the same to me, and I've never got into Assassin's Creed. I think I tried the first one and it's just never gripped me as a franchise. But you know, you've got an Eagle now, that looks kind of interesting. PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, again, Battle Royale, kind of arena PvP. Is it arena sandbox PvP? I don't know if there's a proper genre title for that yet. It seems to be definitely the flavour of the month at the minute. But the thing that interested me the most in Microsoft was some of the indie games. Deep Rock Galactic looked interesting, very much like Astroneer. Again, kind of mining and digging and surviving together. Then there was a really interesting one with a really cool aesthetic called The Last Night, and also finally The Artful Escape, which they all look really intriguing. I think a lot of these games that are showcased, because a lot of it is trailers and it's kind of cut together to make a good impression on the stage or on YouTube with the VOD, it's very hard to get a sense of what these games are, even though we were shown those games and they looked intriguing. Apart from that, we've seen them, we don't really know how they play or what the gameplay is. That's kind of weird, a weird takeaway from this year's E3 that has never been as obvious to me. State of Decay, I am a big State of Decay fan. I played the first one. It was a buggy mess. And again, this trailer, it was quite a lengthy trailer, but it's not an easy game to showcase, State of Decay. The things that make it good don't fit into a trailer. The sense of pace and slow build and tension in exploration and developing your group of guys and their personalities. It's really hard to showcase that. So how much of that is different from the original? How much is new? I don't know. It's kind of like hard to get a sense of what exactly the game is going to be. It looked very similar. You know, if it's similar but they've fixed some of the bugs, that would be a huge step up. The Darwin Project, another kind of battle royale thing that they seem to be really pushing the esports angle with that. You know, a guy doing the commentary on stage at the time. Minecraft, that's still a game apparently. Some people are still playing that and care what the graphics of Minecraft look like. Well, or maybe they don't, and this is again just them trying to push something that no one gives a monkeys about. But there you go. Sea of Thieves, it's a pirate game and you cooperate with your friends, and this is again another lengthy piece of gameplay, but it was so scripted and so obviously vertical slice. It wasn't someone just playing the game. So again, after a really lengthy trailer and watching this game, and you find treasure, you escape from sharks, you jump on ships, you shoot yourself from a cannon onto another ship, you go on an island, you search around. I still don't know how the game plays, and that is really, really weird. If this is supposed to be a showcase for games, I'm not sure what to make of that. Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor is coming. I didn't play the first game, and this game is kind of obviously more of the same, ramped up. At this stage, it might as well be another fantasy setting. It's not Tolkien, so I'm not and if it were another fantasy setting, I might play it, but I'm digging my heels in now. This is not the Lord of the Rings, and it's a travesty. Anthem is the one that got me most interested. It looks like kind of one of those like The Division or Destiny. You could say it's a Destiny clone, or it's kind of one of those MMO light shooter games. You co-op with people and drop in, drop out, and it's not it is a persistent world, but it doesn't have the mechanics of an MMO. It's more immediate. But I like the look of the world, and it just seemed more imaginative and more interesting, a kind of a lush alien world where you're in mech suits, much more kind of got my imagination. So if it's like a Destiny that is less sort of generic, Destiny never really got me, but Anthem looks really, really interesting, but it's BioWare, and I'm like, oh my god. People want to know from BioWare what the story is, and I'm like, I don't think they're that good at storytelling, really. Just as long as it's a good kind of game in that genre, I'm not bothered about this patented BioWare storytelling. It's just because you do something a lot doesn't mean you're good at it. BioWare storytelling, yeah, they try, but they more often than not fail. And also, yeah, and obviously Xbox is good for me. I'm primarily a PC player. Maybe I should have said that at the beginning, but I'm always thinking I haven't owned a console since PS2. I've been exclusively PC all that time, so the fact that everything that comes out on Xbox is also Windows 10 is great for me. Yeah, some stuff to look forward to there. Nothing amazing, and again, nothing that we weren't, apart from the indies, nothing that we were really not expecting already. Heard a little bit and we saw Anthem, I guess. Anyway. So the next conference I was not able to watch live is at 9 p.m. PST, I think, Pacific Standard Time. So that's 6 a.m. in the morning. Thank you, Bethesda. That's no good for me. I need to sleep. But it seems like it was pretty cringy. So I'm dependent on on the VODS. So I won't spend as much time on this conference. But there were no huge reveals. I mean, that's the thing I think people have been saying about this, and it's what I would say as well. Dishonored DLC, great if you're playing Dishonored already. The Evil Within 2 was revealed, so a sequel, yeah, okay, and Wolfenstein, more Wolfenstein is coming. That's great for fans of those games. I'm not particularly into them, but I think people go to Bethesda for those big reveals, new IP, always new Fallout and always new Skyrim, and there was none of either of those. There was a focus on VR, Doom VR, which obviously it looks like you move from point to point, so I'm very interested in seeing how these kind of games, that are already existing games, function in VR. I have to change the mechanics to get around the kind of motion sickness thing, I guess. Also Fallout 4 for same reason. Yeah, it didn't actually show anything in the Fallout 4 footage apart from you moving it with the kind of hand wand thing, how it might function in terms of game mechanics. Interesting to see. Morrowind is coming out for the Elder Scrolls Online. Having played the Elder Scrolls Online recently, I have to say I'm not particularly enamored with the game or looking forward to the DLC, because it's bog standard MMO stuff, and whether it's Morrowind or not, it is pretty basic. They're still continuing to try and find a way to do these mods and wrap them into the games in a more official way with this now creation club. The question here is, you spend credits, so what are those credits, and is this paid, or are these paid mods, or what? I'd like to know more information about that, but they're still continuing to try and get the wrap modding into the games. It's kind of good and bad, isn't it? I mean, mods are already existing in their own ecosystem, and to see a company trying to embrace them and in this way is good. I just hope it's not a cynical thing to make money out of modders. So Ubisoft was the other conference that I missed this year. Life got in the way, basically. It just times didn't line up. But in looking at it, it's kind of interesting how important the people that you follow are for this kind of information, because the conference is set up in such a way that if you have a life and you don't do this for a living, you can't always watch all the conferences live. It's the best way to watch them, but you can't. Life happens, doesn't it? so I'm reliant on VODs. Luckily you can watch them all on YouTube at the moment. You can also watch your favourite critics breakdowns of them. But yeah, so it's kind of a strange, I don't know if it's an anachronism yet, but it's starting to feel like a little bit like the whole setup is a little bit old-fashioned, because most of us consume this stuff after the fact anyway. But it looked interesting. I think the first one that showed up was Mario and Rabbids Mario Kingdom. So I did a little bit of research. I have no idea what a rabbit is. It stands for Idiot Rabbit, I think, and there's some kind of thing that kids are into, and they're having a crossover with Mario. The weird thing about this was it looks like the kind of game I would play if it were designed to be taken seriously. It's very hard for me at the age and the stage of life that I am to take a game that looks like this very seriously, but the mechanics just look like XCOM. So it's like, yeah, I would probably play this if it were set in space and they were, I don't know, epic mechanical gorillas. But they with them being Mario, I'm not so sure. And rabbits. More Assassin's Creed gameplay focusing on graphics and the eagle. That seems to be a big selling point, like this eagle mechanic that you've got. I don't know how. It seems very gimmicky to me. It seems like, well, that's kind of cool, but it's a gimmick, isn't it? It's just another way to see where you need to go, and I suppose all kind of stuff like that is gimmicky. And will it change the game that much? Is that the only thing that they can pick out that is slightly different? Why are they focusing on that so much? It doesn't seem hugely amazing to be able to. It's just like having a drone, isn't it, in like Watch Dogs or Wildlands or something. Okay, but fine. The thing I'm most looking forward to from this year's Ubisoft was South Park: The Fractured Butthole. It's starting to sound like a little bit of a broken record now, but again, very little gameplay, just like watching an episode. There was a slight little bit of character customization, so we saw, you know, with the character customization was good in the original game, but very little about how the game plays and how similar or different it is from the original. And you can also play a version on the phone, which I don't care about. Skull and Bones and pirates, everything happens all at once, doesn't it? Like themes of stuff. Pirates seems to be a thing. This seems to be a more serious take, certainly graphically and in the tone of the game. It's team tactical PvP. It seems like you all have a boat, your own boat in this case. You're not on the same boat, and you kind of, maybe you can be on the same boat, I don't know, but a little bit like the one in the airship one. I can't remember the name of it now. What's it called? Guns of Icarus, but on the high seas. Interesting. Then there appeared on stage a bunch of dancing people and a panda at some point. You know, sometimes in life you progress and you learn new things and you realise you were wrong as a kid. I thought dancing games, and this is Just Dance 2018, I thought dancing games were shit when I was a kid. And it turns out I was right. They are shit. They are still shit. Next up was kind of a spacey thing, and I was watching the VOD of the Supercut of Total Biscuit, and he said something that I was totally agreeing with, that I would have been into this when I was a kid. I was an absolute sucker for this type of thing. I bought into every cynical marketing kids toy, Transformers, He-Man. I was into it all. I lapped it up, and I would have lapped this up. Basically, it's a space game, but you have plastic spaceships that equivalent in the game, and you buy new stuff for your spaceship, physical spaceship, and it enhances your abilities in the game and maybe the types of spaceships you use and stuff. I would have gone mental for this when I was a kid. Now it's very hard for me to see it as anything other than a kind of a really, in the vein of Transformers, He-Man, really spend a lot of money on things that we are selling. Far Cry 5 is coming. This is a series I really need to get into. Up to number 5 now. The selling point of this one seems to be it's an edgy religious sect in the heartlands of America somewhere. The setting and the story really does seem to be the selling point. I don't think there's very much different from the original games. And the big reveal at the end was Beyond Good and Evil 2, which is a game that I completely missed. But it seems to be one that's very well thought of, and It's quite an old game now. I did a quick look online and it's 2003 if I'm looking at the correct game. So it's been kind of rumoured for a while and people have wanted it for a long time. So this is a big deal to a lot of people, and that's great when they bring back something people really want. And it did lead to a bit of genuine emotion. It's kind of a shame that the bit of genuine emotion that pops through has to be a cringy bit where someone breaks down in tears. If they could find a middle ground between complete corporate schlock, buttoned up, artificial garbage and someone bursting into tears, that'd be great. It's some kind of middle ground. So the PlayStation conference was next up, and this is one that I've always enjoyed in the past. PlayStation often always seems to prioritize games and the trailers and just show footage of gameplay and trailers, and it was true this year. Something seemed different this year though. There were literally this guy just talking for I think he only appeared on stage twice, and it was relatively short. And last year I was really impressed by that. I think this year, perhaps because the games we kind of either they were already shown last year or we knew they were coming, kind of was a little bit underwhelming this time. But PlayStation is always interesting for, I'm a PC gamer, but there's always the potential for ports down the road, and you know, things like Destiny 2, which was shown, is coming to PC this time, so it's all kind of relevant. I'm paying a little bit closer attention to it now because it's something that I might pick up. I do like the idea of an MMO that doesn't take quite as much time and investment as a kind of traditional MMO. Unusual in this case in that they're exclusives if you buy it on PS4. That's kind of weird. I suppose they've got to do whatever they can. If you haven't got a console exclusive, then you can have exclusive gear in your version of the game. Another Uncharted game coming, and that looks kind of cool. It's good for those who are already into the franchise. Again, continuations of franchises. Horizon Zero Dawn, the DLC for that is coming out, and that's done hugely well and is very popular. Another game that was shown last year is Days Gone, and they showed an awful lot of this, and I have to say by the end of it I was kind of as underwhelmed as I was last time. It looks like kind of it's third person stealth in a zombie apocalypse, and we've kind of seen that elsewhere, so I don't know what the selling point of this game is and why we're supposed to think it's so good, apart from the fact that there are lots of zombies running around quite quickly. Yeah, okay, fine. Monster Hunter is a franchise that I've never got into because it's always been on Nintendo, I believe, and that looks like it's coming to PS4 as well. I mean, obviously I'm looking for games that might make me buy a PS4, and potentially, I guess, this is a franchise I've never got into, but I've always been intrigued by it and I've wanted to try it. I wonder how the Monster Hunter World things work, you know, how the multiplayer functions, and with it being a franchise I've never played, you just need more information, don't you? Looks kind of cool though. More Marvel and Capcom, because the worlds in isolation are not stupid enough, so we combine them into two for maximum stupid. But I know why people love it, and you know, a good fighting game with characters that you know and love is great, but really absurd in the extreme at this point. There's flipping, what's his face? The android guy and big purple dude. VR was mentioned a bit. The one that really jumped out for me was Skyrim in VR. Really intrigued again because of the movement system in VR and how you have to change games so that they work in VR to minimize motion sickness and that kind of thing. But I mean, really what we want is a new Skyrim game. I don't know how many more versions of this they can bring out. Mobile maybe, yeah, because it's coming out on Switch. I forgot to mention that in the Bethesda conference, mainly because it's completely pointless. God of War. This looks like a good one for people who had kind of missed the franchise, and I'm one of those to maybe jump into it at this point. Apparently there's kind of minimal need to have played the other games in terms of plot, and the mechanics are quite different, so possibly a good jumping in point for people who have been intrigued by the series. But you know, it's always daunting to jump into something that's got 3 or 4 games already under its belt. Where do you begin? Maybe here. And this David Cage game, Detroit Become Human, I'll put my cards on the table. I'm not a fan of this type of game. It seems to be stretching the limit of what I want to consider. You know, I just like it seems to me like a graphical multiple choice adventure book. kind of what do you do next kind of thing, and those are the choices that you get, and a branching story. And you know, the idea that, oh wow, it's got multiple endings. So what? So what if it's got multiple endings? Lots of things have multiple endings. That's been done to death in literature. I don't know why it's so mind-blowing in games. I'm really sounding incredibly cynical. I mean, yeah, it's just I play games for mechanics, and I like a little bit of story, and this seems to be story and a little bit of player input, but very minimal and not enough for me to kind of get into this style of game. And Spidey, who doesn't want a Spider-Man game? It's always nice to see Spidey in games. This was a really kind of scripted sequence. There was a little bit of combat here at the beginning, and then the rest of it seemed very scripted. It seemed to transition between QTE and some more open bits. The web swinging looked fluid. I couldn't see that was QTE. That seemed to be being controlled by the player, but it was obvious that this is kind of a designed showcase of the game. It's kind of not free roaming gameplay, so hard to tell, but they showed off QTE mixed in with some combat and the web swinging, so see how it goes. So good, but I mean, again, no huge reveals. We knew what most of it was, and some of it even was shown last year, so I think fairly underwhelming. I think last year's went a little bit better because there were some some of these games were new reveals last year and not this time around. So I'm going to do something unusual for the Nintendo bit because I don't want this getting copyright struck on YouTube. It takes a long time to edit and pare down this stuff into a digestible form for people, and despite what Nintendo thinks, they don't own it because Mario appears in it. So I hope you will enjoy this PNG of what I am calling Hypno Mario to stand in place. The Nintendo conference, if you could call it a conference, was very short. We've been doing this every year, and this year I think it seemed, unless my memory fails me, the shortest ever. There's a new Yoshi game, and you'll be able to tell that I'm not a big Nintendo devotee. I had the NES and the SNES many years ago, and since then I've not been a player of Nintendo. So if you came here for Nintendo information, this is not going to be the most in-depth. There's a new Yoshi game and some sort of anime bollocks. Zelda in Skyrim, which is really weird, kind of. You can play Skyrim on the Switch, as I said earlier, but you also get Zelda items in it. Why? I don't really know. Zelda DLC, there are two coming out at the same time, Master Trials and Champions Ballad, I believe. That's kind of weird for two DLCs to be announced together at the same time like that, and they're coming not far apart really. So I don't know why they couldn't roll those two into one, because you get half the money, I guess. Oh, Splatoon, yeah, and Rabbids, the Rabbids thing. Rocket League coming to Switch, and Super Mario Odyssey. That looks very interesting. Mario's a staple. Mario in my mind is a little bit like Mickey Mouse now, and he's just ubiquitous and he'll always be there. I won't say that I consider him a little bit crap like Mickey Mouse, but that's just my personal opinion. Will I be buying a Switch? No, not based on any of those games. But they don't need me to buy a Switch. They've got the people who've already got Switches, and maybe they're going to be happy. And if you're one of those people, good on you. I'm glad you're enjoying your Nintendo gameplay. So thank you for joining me for this E3 wrap-up. It's a bit unusual for me, but I felt like I'm not a critic, but I am an enthusiast of games with a gaming channel, and it seems like a good idea to reflect on this, what is a big event in the gaming calendar, and I have enjoyed watching it. Overall thoughts on it, I think this was a pretty underwhelming E3. A lot of DLC, a lot of sequels, a lot of stuff that we already knew was coming, so my overall feeling is a little bit underwhelmed. There are still some games in there that I'm looking forward to. For me, State of Decay 2, South Park springs to mind. I'm sure others will once I stop recording, that's always the way of things, but there's stuff to look forward to, but no massive reveals, and I think E3 perhaps is, maybe it's not going to be the place for massive reveals anymore moving forward. Maybe it's a little bit, it's kind of, there are better ways for these companies to get the word out about their games these days, or perhaps it's just a fallow year where the development cycle isn't in place to be talking about those new games. I was very disappointed that there was no news on a new Star Wars game from EA. That was a big disappointment for me. So a fairly subjective look there from me. Feel free to put your subjective opinions in the comments and let me know what you think. I have newfound respect for critics and people who do this on a regular basis. It takes a lot of time to get all the footage, put your thoughts together and compile it into a video. So good learning process for me in this case. If you'd like to check out my channel, I do gaming content, a lot of Skyrim at the moment, and some miscellaneous gameplay, and also have a vlog. I'm basically a gaming channel, and feel free to drop by and check out some of the videos. I've been Napier, thank you for watching, and hopefully speak to you again in the future. Bye for now.
No.